Oh no, that is what they all say when they see me pouring some mud.
Hi there guys, welcome back to another episode of 4K Garage. So in this episode we're just going to continue where we left off with the LS3. So in the last couple of episodes I disassembled all the heads, got that all apart, started taking apart all the rockers, getting all the trunnion upgrade done, getting everything cleaned up really, getting all the valves cleaned up, getting all that ready to be reassembled at some point. And on this episode I want to move on to actually cleaning the heads themselves. Currently they're just big oily blocks of aluminium. So I'm going to get some degreaser in there, only a little bit. I know aluminium is quite susceptible to chemical corrosion, so a little bit of degreaser, some brake cleaner, and mostly just using a steam cleaner and some brushes, so being nice and gentle on them. Hopefully get them looking good, both inside and out, and then I'm gonna start putting them all back together. So really, I mean, what's left to do but crack on with it? So just get them up on the bench, crack out the steam cleaner and some brushes, and just start doing all the horrible messy bits. Let's jump into it. Right, so as I just said, today's plan is to start cleaning up the heads so we can start putting them back together. Now, I've already done one of them. I wanted to test some kind of techniques and so on to get them all cleaned. I want to do it all by hand myself rather than take them to a shop, save a little bit of money, have some content to show you guys and so on. Before I jump into cleaning up the second head, let me just show you kind of the results of doing on the first one. So this was a few things. So here's the second head, and as you can see it's still looking rather grimy, and here's the clean head. Now the inside there, you know, it's just oil stained, petrol stained, so on, whatever, it's not a big deal. The intake ports looking nice and clean. Coming around to the exhaust ports, you can just see there the comparison between nice clean exhaust port faces and the dirty ones previously. So got the sides, and if I flip them over, that really shows the state of the heads previously, of course before and after. I haven't gone too gung-ho. If I get a light here, you can just see in the old kind of intake and exhaust port, they're pretty gunky, gummed up, and the problem is that this kind of deposit here, it's all really, it's not only carbony, it's gummy and oily and sticky. As we come over here to the clean heads, you can just see, for the most part, the combustion chambers are cleaner. The exhaust ports are still built up with carbon. I think that's going to be, you know, just one of those things that'll all come out when the engine gets, you know, hot, get some heat cycles in. The intake ports are looking much cleaner compared to before, and yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff will come off even further when, you know, the engine gets some heat into it, go through some combustion cycles. But I just really wanted to also clean up the gasket surfaces. As you can see, it's looking much better. Now to do this, what I did was, I mean, used a lot of elbow grease obviously, and I used a mixture of brake cleaner, carb cleaner, brushes. I had some rotary tools. I had a Scotch-Brite pad and a drill to do a lot of the exterior, clean up the exterior of it, and a Dremel with a wire wheel brush to again clean up the exterior, get some, I mean, it's had sealant used on it in the past, which seems a bit weird to me. Just don't need sealant anywhere near the head gasket surfaces, so that was a bit strange, but whatever. Used a little bit of that to get some of the gasket surface off, but also to clean up the outside, and then finally cleaned off the head surfaces with sharpening stone. Of course, it's nice and flat. It's got a, I would say, probably 400 and 600 grit finish. So just lightly skimmed across the top of the surfaces with, well, top of that surface and the manifold surfaces with this. And as you can see, it's brought up very nice. So let's get cracking on the second one. Once we've got all this cleaned up, we can lap the valves and start getting it all back together. Let's crack into it. Right, so here we are. Coming with a bit of a voiceover over the time-lapse, as you can see. Now, I just wanted to time-lapse all this footage for cleaning up the heads rather than bore you guys with it. But as you can see, just starting off by cleaning up the outside of the head. Figured that if any dust or debris comes off the exterior and flies into the head, then of course that'll be washed out during the internal cleaning. Start off by getting rid of this, I don't know what it was, sealant or paint perhaps, but it's quite stubborn on there. As you can see, I started to use some rather abrasive rotary pads. Did leave quite a rough finish on the head, so I just wanted to make that a little bit more uniform with some maroon and grey Scotch-Brite. Then moving on to simply using a Dremel and a wire brush to clean up the cast external areas of the head. That really did a good trick to get it a bit more shiny. And just finishing off the intake manifold surface here with the sharpening stone. This really worked to just make sure it's all flat, make sure it's all clean, and I mean, it looked fantastic when it was done. Come around to the exhaust side, again trying the Scotch-Brite pads and the wire wheel. And I'm not really trying to make it look as spotless as it could. I'm not trying to go for a mirror finish, just want to get any kind of grease, grime, debris, paint, sealant, whatever that's kind of worked its way into the cast finish of the head. Just want to get that out, make it a little bit nicer. And just dousing everything in loads and loads of brake cleaner just to clean it up. Once again, using a sharpening stone here. Just going around that sensor there, which eventually I just took out in the end. Just did the whole thing. And with that sharpening stone, just using some lubricant there, WD-40 or such, fogging oil as well, just to give it some decent lubrication. I'm not really trying to go for a super flat finish, but just something a little bit uniform. Also cleans it, finishes it off nicely. Yeah, hopefully gives it a good surface for the exhaust manifold to seal onto. I think you'll agree that looks 1,000 times better than it did previously. Finally moving on to the inside. Now this head truthfully wasn't as dirty as the first one, so there wasn't a whole lot to do here. Just went around with some light brushes, brake cleaner, carb cleaner, that kind of thing, just trying to break down any kind of big deposits of really grimy oil. And yes, that is a toothbrush. One of the worst areas really was the intake runners. The exhaust runners aren't the end of the world because of course any deposits that come out of those just go down the flow of the exhaust and exit out the back of the car. But with the intake I really wanted to clean them up just because of course any oil, grime, dirt, debris that comes loose during the running would just fly into the engine and just make for running the car in and tuning it initially. Probably not as good as it could be. So I was really working those with as you saw, some brushes, steam cleaner, brake cleaner, just everything. And coming around to the exhaust spots, a lot of this is just carbon build-up. Like I say, it will all come out when the car gets running, gets hot. I just thought work it out as best I can with the brake cleaner. Then moving on to the gasket surface, really trying my best to clean this up. Of course, the more clean the gasket surface, the better seal the head gasket will have, and the better the engine will be overall. So started off gently with a plastic scraper, just getting off any old gasket material. Then just kind of working the combustion chambers here with some brake cleaner or brush, just getting off some of the really baked on oily deposits out as best I can. Don't want to go too harsh on it, but at the same time I want to get as much out as possible. Of course we're going to be coming in and relapping the valves anyway. Finally, I'm just finishing off the head surface here with the sharpening stone as I did before. Now this is really doing wonders to clean up any remaining gasket material. It will remove some material, but then perhaps it's removing also any high spots from the head, giving it somewhat of a flatter surface overall, and hopefully will seal the head gasket better. The main goal is to really just clean it up, make sure it's absolutely spotless from any kind of old sealant or old head gasket material, and I'm really not being too aggressive with it. Unfortunately, after this clip the battery in my camera ran out, so that's all you're going to get. So let's move on to the valve lapping. Right, so here we are. We're going to start lapping the valves. So I wanted to give you guys a nice close-up view. So of course here's the head surface, here's all the valves. And what we need to do, I'll show you, is if we take out one of the valves, I haven't done this one. This is an intake valve. If we take out the one next to it, which we have done, and what you can hopefully see between the two is the one here is the one we haven't done yet, the one here is the one we have done. And you can see how the surface is much brighter on this one and much more uniform. And that's because it's been lapped and kind of lightly ground down to match the surface of the valve seats here. Let me put those back and I'll show you an exhaust one. The exhaust ones are much more apparent how well they've come out. Here we go, this is a much clearer example. So if we have a look at these two, the one on the right here is the old one and the one on the left here is the new one. And you can just see just how much shiny that one is. Now this one's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Probably going to go over it once more, but I mean look, that one's basically black and this one's silver, and that just means they're going to seal a lot better against the surface. It means we're not going to lose any compression. Of course more compression means more power, and this is one of those steps that is just worth doing. you know, if you want an engine to run well, I'll show you now how easy it is. So we're gonna go through the whole process on these two, and then I'm gonna be finishing off all the rest with one more pass of the fine grit. I'll just show you our tools. So we got this grinding paste, quite an old looking pot. On one end it's got coarse. Got a coarse in there. On one end it's got fine. It's much finer. And then you got one of these bizarre looking double-ended plunger things. And what you do is you stick that on, you rub it between your hands and just spin it around in the seat. So let's start doing that now. Once they're all ready, it's quite simple really. Get some of the coarse paste here, pop that out again. And all you do, put some around the edge here. And you have to do this a few times because as you grind it in, it disperses and moves away from the seat of the valve. Just a little bit of oil on the stem, just so it rotates around nicely in there. You see that it's now plunged onto there, and all we do is spin it. It makes this grinding noise. Move it around a little bit. As you can hear, it goes much quieter. Moves from the paste up back towards the edge. And this is it really, just keep doing this, just keep moving the paste. A little bit more paste on it, probably don't need a huge amount, but it's almost easier to put more on than it is to move it back around. And these particular ones, having done all the others a little bit, they're going to have to be done a few times, a few passes, just because they seem quite pitted. So there we go, really getting into it now.
A few moments later.
Here we go, let's have a look at this one. There we go, so this is the course done, and as you can see, it's looking much better. You see that big, wide, silvery ring, all nice and uniform around there. So now all we've got to do on this one is do the same, but with the fine. So I'm just going to do the exhaust real quick. In it goes. Just one of those things that can be quite therapeutic. The only real boring bit is moving all the grit around.
Much later.
You can see here the difference after doing the coarse and the exhaust, where it was previously like entirely black. Now it's got the nice silver ring around it. So if you still a few pits, you can see there some spots, but we're going to move on to the fine now. Give us a couple of passes of fine and hopefully those will come out as well. Now with the fine, it's totally the same process as before. Paste goes on. You can hear the difference in sound. And there we go, we can see with the fine done how good it's looking. That should seal up nicely, give us lots of compression, decent amount of power. Time to give the exhaust valve a little bit of fine. Won't bore you with watching all that again, so let's just show you the finished result. You see there, all those last little spots, totally gone. Got a nice smooth finish there to the exhaust valve, and that will seal up brilliantly. There we have it. All the valves on the engine have been lapped. The only thing to do now is to get all the new valve springs installed. So I'm really looking forward to that, so let's crack into it. Right, so here we are. Got the heads all cleaned up, and now it's time to finally get onto the exciting part. The bit that I've been looking forward to for a very long time, installing some shiny new parts. Can't wait. So first things first, let's get some of the new valve seals in here. So here they are, lovely new valve seals, one piece, and they seat in here. Now what I need to do, I'm just gonna give them a little bit of a helping hand, because they are a little bit tight. Just gonna dip them in some oil. I'm just gonna use a hammer and a deep socket to gently tap them home. Here we go, all 8 seals installed. Next step is to get all the valves in. So start from this side, a bit of oil on the stem. Next new exciting part, new double valve springs, rated up to 660 lift. So these should be plenty up to the job, along with some new of these. Titanium valve, whatever they are. I'll flash it up on screen. There you go there. Now, much like last time when you saw me removing the valves in the last episode, we're going to use the big valve spring compressor. Now, the only problem with this is, as I said in the last episode, it's already not quite big enough to fit around these heads. So last time it was all right because the valve springs were already half compressed when they were in the engine. Now they're fully decompressed, so even more tricky. So because of that, I've had to make some modifications to the tool here, grinded that away, and grinded part of the seat here away just so it sits even more open. And one side goes underneath, the other side sits on the top here. And this time what I'm going to do is I found it's a little bit easier if I tighten up the bottom end. Here we go. Now you might be able to see here, the top of the valve stem is now poking free from that, and that's where the last part of the puzzle comes in. The ever so tiny locks, and you might be able to see these. There we are. And what they do is they just clip around the top of the valve and just kind of get compressed in. And they're kind of in a cylindrical cone shape. So as they get pressed outwards, they lock it in. Simple as that. Now this isn't the easiest job in the world when everything's covered in oil, so give myself as good a chance as any, and just use some assembly lube because it's quite sticky. There we go. Now all I'm going to do, undo the bottom, and that should keep itself nicely held in there. There we have it. The first one is installed. It's looking good. Can't see any problems with that. Just to be sure, let's give it a little whack of a hammer. I don't know why, I've just always seen people do this, so. Sounds good. Hasn't gone flying off into the stratosphere. So, move on to the next one, the exhaust port. Same thing again. Tool here goes on. Tighten down, get the two locks. There we go. Undo it. There we have it. Hammer test. Feel like an instrument. That's 2 of them done, 1 intake, 1 exhaust. Now I'm just going to move on to the other 6. And when this is all said and done, all I can say is that I'm very thankful there isn't 4 or 5 valves per cylinder. Let's move on to the others.
What's all this for? It's got me turned around, but I can't ignore the feelings that I found in this whole damn thing that we got going. You hold the strings without me knowing. Why do I have to suffer through the thinking? Why do I have the feeling that we're sinking? I need to find a way. Find a way. Find a way. Find a way out. Find a way out.
Here we go, 8 new sets of valve springs, all installed, valves done. Let's move on to the last final exciting bit, the rocker arms. Now I'm not going to install these for good because these need to come out again, but I'm going to put them in there just so the whole thing looks finished. Right, so we've got the rocker arm carrier here, we've got the rocker arm bolts, and we have the rocker arms themselves, all cleaned up with their special new bearing upgrade. Now there's one thing to keep in mind on these L92 engines. I think this is different from the LS3, but you have a slightly offset rocker arm and a straight rocker arm. Now the offset ones, I believe, go to the intake valves and the straight ones go to the exhaust valves. So let's get those all in. Now obviously I'm not going to torque these down, they need to come out again to get the head bolts in there, but for now, there it is. Just rock around on there. Very nice, and that's it. The head's totally reassembled. At some point the rocker arm covers are going here. I haven't cleaned those up, and I'm not sure if I'm going to reuse the ones that came with the engine. They're just a bit beaten up, and they look a bit naff. So we might get some brand new ones. So here are the finished heads. Looking much cleaner. Nice new valve springs. Cleaned up rocker arms. Nice new trunnion bearing upgrade. These will go along with the new push rods and the brand new cam. just give a whole new valve train to the engine. I'm going to wrap these up, put them on a shelf, and just let them sit for a while. Next step would be move on to clean out the engine itself, get the pistons out, replace the rod bearings, get the crank out, replace the crank bearings. As I say, I'm just kind of rebuilding the engine from top to bottom. These are looking very good. But I think here we'll wrap it up, quite literally. I'm going to wrap these up, put them on the shelf. I'm going to wrap up the episode. And that's it then. So the heads are now finished over this little two-parter. Hope you enjoyed coming along for that little journey. Sorry about it taking a little while to get this episode out. It's just a little bit difficult these days to produce videos. It just takes me a little while to film and edit and do all the work in each video, juggling things like a job and, you know, other annoyances like that. Hopefully as the weather gets nicer, as we get throughout the year, bring a few more videos out to you guys. I think next episode we're not going to be jumping into the engine. What I would like to do is actually get the 86 out, clean it up, just do a little spanner check on everything that we did last year. And then yeah, hopefully we can start taking it out again, take it to a few meets, take it to a few shows this year. Then we come back to the engine. As I say, got to do all the bits, so taking the pistons out and all that. That's going to be a little ways off just because I need a little bit of money to buy all the bearings and so on. And I'm trying to find a flat at the moment, so a lot of my time and money is going into that. So as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for more. Do give the video a like. Leave a little comment if you'd like. What you think of the process of tearing down and building back up the heads. And then as always, give a little subscribe if you could, as I think only about 5 or 10% of you are actually subscribed. But anyway, as always, cheers. Bye-bye.